it's been really interesting during these times, and, COVID-19 going on, and people are just kind of wondering, hey, are you still working? How's everything going on with the market and such? And I have great news. And the great news is I'm still every day, being able to work with some amazing individuals that really, say that 2020 is my year and I'm going to buy me a home. And today I have one of those guests on with me, and his name is Neville. Neville, say hello.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
He's a friend, actually a longtime friend that I've known for a while. And it's so funny, we've never talked real estate, before until maybe the end of last year or such, the beginning of the year, the end of last year. And when he came to me, it was like, okay, I've been praying on this, and this is what God, has says, and what do I do to get started? So we're going to go through his journey because it's really unique. During his journey, COVID-19 happened, and a little uncertainty happened there too. So those that are looking for this year, for it to be their year, I'm hoping that I bring great testimonies of people that, just like you, may have been on the fence, or, maybe there was opposition that kind of happened, but they pushed through. And in the end, his home is so beautiful. And it was more than what was anticipated. It's even when we were looking in other areas. But first, let's talk about some activation. So I'm an activation type of person. Later on, we're going to have a little education, and then we're going to have some empowerment. But Proverbs 16 is where I'm going to start off at. I love Proverbs. Like, if you haven't figured that out already, Proverbs, that's my book. But Proverbs 16, TPT version, yep, that's right. It says, go ahead and make all the plans you want, but it's the Lord who will ultimately direct your steps. We are all in love with our own opinions, convinced they're correct, but the Lord is in the midst of us, testing and probing our every motive. So before you do anything, put your trust totally in God and not in yourself. Then every plan you make will succeed. The Lord works everything together to accomplish his purpose. Even the wicked are included in his plans. He sets them aside for the day of disaster. Exalting yourself is disgusting to the Lord, for pride attracts his punishment, and you can count on that. You can also avoid evil through surrendered worship and the fear of God. The power of his faithful love removes sin's guilt and grip over you. When the Lord is pleased with the decisions you've made, he activates grace to turn enemies into friends. It's better to have little with a heart that loves justice than to be rich and not have God on your side. Within your heart, you can make plans for your future, but the Lord chooses the steps you take to get there. I love this chapter and this whole verse. I think, and when we're talking, Neville, and this whole thing is kind of like your situation all wrapped up into one.
Yeah, verbatim. Actually, I was cheesing over here. I don't think I've spent too much time on Proverbs 16, but just hearing you say it, like, that just hit me. I was like, wow, that pretty much goes with everything that I feel like God has taught me over life. Yeah.
So. Yeah. And this is what we're going to talk about. This is one of the reasons why I love your story. And, even in this verse, right, go ahead and make all the plans that you want. And I tell people that, absolutely. If it's in your heart, go ahead and go for it. But it's the Lord who will ultimately direct your steps. Yes, we have free will. Absolutely, we can choose and do things. However, if in fact we say, okay, God, I'm making this decision, which Neville, like you did, like, okay, God, I'm making this decision. This is what I'm thinking, but this is what I'm feeling. And we'll talk about that later. But, in the end of it, I loved how you walked it out. You walked it out and said, look, just like in verse 2, we are all in love with our own opinions, convinced that they're correct. But the Lord is in the midst of us, testing and probing our every motive. So ultimately, as we're walking this thing out, I could see like the heart checks, the mind checks, the God checks, the Holy Spirit checks. Like, is this where you want me to be? Is this really the direction that you want me to go? Will I be a light here in this community and where I'm going? Is it time to even move away from my own fellowship that I've had, that I've built. We'll talk about that. And again, that's why I say this verse, this chapter is a great, at least it's a great mirror as to how to walk out faith when you can't really see it. And, we have a lot of plans. And, I really think even in verse 3 where it says, before you do anything, put your trust totally in God and not in yourself. And seeing that walked out and played out, even my own self, when I do, work with people and, they may know kind of where they want to be. My first instinct is to say, no, where does God want you? Oh, I never thought about that, Tamika.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, seriously. You may have something in your heart, especially if you're a person of faith, but God, where do you want me? Because I may think it may be over here, which, we'll get into because that's what the story led us. But God, you work everything together to accomplish your purpose anyway. So even if I make a left and I should have made a right, that's okay, because you're still there to accomplish your purpose. It may not be that the house is over there, but I learned something very valuable about my character. I learned something very valuable about maybe the process. I learned something valuable. And so nothing's ever wasted. That's the beauty about it. Nothing is ever wasted. Even in the part on getting a pre-approval process, nothing is ever wasted. At least hey, this is where I stand, right? This is where my credit stands. This is where my assets stand. This is where I stand with my job right now and what I need to do to kind of get better or to get to the place that I want to be, right? Maybe the first one's a stepping stone to get to ultimately where I want to be. But ultimately, it is, God directing and guiding. And I think that's just amazing. And because this kind of fits your situation, anything you want to say about this, at least in opening up, so people know how this has affected your life?
Yeah, I think just high level, like whenever I've had to make an important decision, when I, became pretty much what I would consider more of a mature Christian, I would always kind of go back and, pray about it. And you're absolutely right. Like sometimes we have desires in our hearts and minds, and sometimes those are there because, God actually gives us those desires. And you're right. As long as you make a decision, and even if there is something wrong with the motive, or maybe if there's nothing wrong with the motive, but God just has a different plan, if you submit your plans to God, like, I mean, he has proven himself true in that regards to me, that he will still kind of help you to shift course in the right direction. So, yeah.
Right. Exactly. No, and thank you for that, Neville, because I'm of the mindset that, it's wise counsel to even talk to those that have walked it out, and that's biblical as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those that have walked it out. And this is one of the reasons why in bringing on, individuals like yourself that pretty much set themselves up for what God has for you in this season. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about your process and your thought process on even why home ownership 2020, it's pretty pivotal, like why. And, even as a single male, a single Christian male, what things were you thinking of, even in your own life right now, in setting yourself up for next? Because, hey, what's usually next? Marriage, a little bit, at least for my husband it was, right? Setting yourself up for the inevitable and saying, God, I'm positioning myself so when it's that time, I'm ready to go. And I have a place, that can house and nest someone amazing as well. So stay tuned when we come back. This is Tamika Ellsworth with Faith in Home Buying, and we're equipping people of faith for the home buying process. All right, so we started it off with a little bit of activation, Proverbs 16, and it fits Neville's, most call him Nev as well, but it fits the situation to the T. So we're going to talk a little bit about why home ownership and why now, Neville. There's been plenty of times I'm sure that you've had it on your heart and thinking about it, but why did you decide to make the decision now?
Well, I think there is definitely a few reasons around that. One, I knew a while back that, the next step in my life was to start settling down, investing in some property, just on a very practical level, financial, like hitting certain financial goals. So I started saving. I started saving a while back. And I always knew that when the time was right, I had a feeling that the finances were gonna, have been saved up just enough to be able to take that step, and
Right.
just from an investment standpoint, I was trying to hit the market when it was, a little more affordable. But as you know, just kind of over the past few years, it's been really, really tough. And yeah, I think there was just a subtle knowing inside of myself that knew that, hey, I've, saved up enough for a solid down payment. I know I'm secure in my job, in my career, and I think this is the time to kind of go out there and start looking. And when I first started, I prayed about it. I said, God, I feel like this is the time, and if it is, help me figure it out. Help me to stumble, along the way. And it was interesting because I was like, okay, well, one of the first steps is to see, okay, do I actually have enough money? Like, what's that going to look like? What's the monthly
Right.
payment going to look like? I said, let me kind of let that help me be part of the deciding factor. So when I started to dive into the research, I started to learn about like all these programs that are out there for first time home buyers. You don't necessarily need to use all the money you've saved up, or even if you don't have enough saved up, that there are ways to work around it.
Right.
And sure enough, just around that time when I was doing that research, I happened to catch one of your
That's
fake home
right.
buying, I think it was on Facebook. I saw a clip, and the
Yeah.
program was about like first time home buyer programs. And
Right.
I was just like, well, this is kind of a coincidence. Let me just, yeah, I remember I was driving to work, and I was like, well, hey, I got a long commute ahead of me. Why don't I just kind of let this play in the background? And I did. I just let it play in the background, and I was like, oh man, this is great information, And I think that was one of the hints that I was like, okay, let's see if we can really make this happen. Yeah.
Exactly. No, and I remember that too. That was what the first part of you calling. And it's so interesting because again, some things it sparks us, but that's not necessarily even the direction that God wants us to go, but it got our attention.
Yeah.
And it did, and got your attention. And then from there, I think it's kind of cool. You acted. And from there it was more of, all right, and then now what? What are
Mhm.
my next steps?
Mhm.
And so, and that's where a lot of people kind of stop at. Oh, well, no, I have to do, no, I'll wait to do that. But I like the fact that you said, you know what? I'm gonna go through with the process and let's see where it lands me.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we got pre-approved, which was great, pretty decent amount. But then now, where's the dilemma? The dilemma is where.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
And
what was your thought process on the where? Because you had a couple of areas in mind, which were two completely polar opposite areas.
yeah.
But what was your thought process in what you thought you wanted?
Yeah. In my mind, I knew that I wanted a home that I didn't really have to do much work to. Other than maintenance, which I find that stuff is easier for me just because of kind of grow up on, kind of a
Mm-hmm.
technical-minded guy. So the maintenance part was easy. It was just having to go through, and renovate and do, the kitchen, redo the kitchen, remodel. Like I wanted to avoid all that. So I knew I was kind of leaning towards something newer, if not brand new.
Mm-hmm.
And just maybe the last time, which was about 5-6 years ago, when I did start looking for a place. Back then, my heart got settled on Mountain House, which is right next to Tracy, if people
Mm-hmm.
don't know. And I thought it was a great community because it was brand new developments, brand new homes. And I just felt really, I visited friends out there. It's just the community is great. You could walk around and you can feel safe, and I wanted a good place that I can live, that I could walk around freely and feel safe and just have a good community and meet nice people and nice families. And, to honestly just be set up for, that next step in my life, which would be
Mm-hmm.
marriage and kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was the best of both worlds. I could afford out there something that I really wanted. Everything I wanted, I could afford out there. So that was so when you and I first started talking, that's where my heart was initially. I was like, that's where it was left. Let's just kind of pick it up from there. And yeah, and I'm just looking at what I could afford and kind of going out there. I liked it. I thought it was a solid plan, everything I wanted. So yeah, and then I figured, just for the sake of being objective, because I knew what I was kind of getting into. I did talk to a lot of people that live out there,
Yeah.
commute here to the Bay Area. I knew that it was going to be a tough commute. I knew that it was going to be a lifestyle change, but I figured, you know what? It's my first home. I'm single currently. You know, if I'm going to be able to sacrifice the time to have something that I really, really like, now would be that time to do it. So those were pretty much my initial take on the where. But as you know, that kind of went out the window.
But I want to make sure I bring that to light, and why, even, with our plans that we have and what we think and what's in our hearts, right? Because many are the plans of man's heart, right? And me as an agent, right? Like, I want to make sure that you're happy, but I also want to make sure, just as a friend, but then as an agent, that is this the right decision for you, especially in your spiritual aspect, right? Because your church body, your church friends, everyone was over here in this side of the Bay. And so talk about that process, because I know that's what a lot of people are thinking about too. Well, shoot, I can afford over there and I can really get everything that I want, but that's going to pull me away from my, my church family, and sometimes my immediate family too, but really my spiritual family. And I don't feel that God's calling me. And that was a whole lot of our discussion. I don't feel like God's calling me away from it yet. Talk about that thought process.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm pretty active, like, in my faith. And when I say active in my faith, I mean, like, I am part of a few different church communities, or groups that, meet various times throughout the weekend. And all of them are, in the Mountain View, San Jose area. So I knew that if I moved out there on a very practical point, I might be able to still work it out logistically to still attend the things on Fridays. But realistically, if I were to hold up each one of those groups that I'm a part of, I'd have to drive from Mountain House back to the Bay Area Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which was a lot. So I started to think, well, maybe, I knew on the practical side that was too much. So I thought, well, maybe if this dream is really from God, He wants me to kind of settle on a church family out there. And then, I already had some groups in mind that I've already been close to.
Right. And you were highly considering it, right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And so that, in a nutshell, I think that's it. I knew I would have to make a spiritual life change as well as a practical life change. So
exactly. No, but that is a real question. It's a real topic that it comes up every single time, especially for believers, that one big part of their lives are the church family. And so that is something to consider when you're considering looking at homes and places and such. Of course, you get your first initial, your pre-approval amount, right? So that's your purchasing power. Okay, now I know that the price point. Now, how can I fit what I'm looking for and what God is calling me to? How can I fit that in this price point and still be able to, number one, worship, which is kind of interesting now because we're all like digital right now. Right? But after the fact, when things do open back up, which is interesting, but when things open back up, right? Like, how am I still going to be connected? Because that's a hard part, because a lot of times, people think, I'm going away, but then I'm disconnecting from really my source of everything that has made me who I am today. So that's a real topic for anyone contemplating whether or not they are, ready to leave, the church body that they have. It's God calling you away. Because if you know that He's calling you away, you already know that your season's coming to an end, a little bit different. But if you know that you've been planted there and God has planted people and things in your life, is it really time to uproot? So, that's just, I think that's a great way for people to really understand, is now the time or is it not? And if it doesn't make sense and it is disconnecting you, then maybe it's not the time. And maybe that's not the area. We'll talk a little bit more about how the area was found, and it was a great happy medium. This is Tamika Ellsworth, Faith in Home Buying. We'll see you in a second. All right, so we're back again. You know, this whole situation, we're talking about Proverbs 16. I'm just kind of like, I'm going to keep referring to Proverbs 16 and the different verses in it, because again, I have a special guest, Neville, with me, who friend slash past client slash, eligible bachelor out there. But, I love this story because it's a great walk on, having plans in your heart, executing on them, but still allowing the Holy Spirit to move and guide and direct. And now we get to this part of the story where, yes, Mountain House, we've identified a property, right, Neville, that you love. You could see yourself coming home.
Home too, yeah. Just de-stressing the moment I walk in the door. Yeah.
Right, with that long drive that you're going to be taking from the Bay, right?
California road.
Right, and decent price point. We were up there. I mean, it took probably about a whole month. I mean, every weekend, pretty much over there. I like the drive too, and I love the Mountain House area as well. So shout out to Mountain House. But we found a home, great price. Great, everything that you wanted, pretty much in the house. Yeah. However, even then, God's plans, and this is where we come to the part of the verse in Proverbs 16 about 4. The Lord works everything together to accomplish his purpose. Even the wicked are included in his plans. He sets them aside for the day of disaster. So ultimately, even in, even if you have something identified, this is it, my heart is set on it, God will continue to go in and say, wait a minute, this is a blessing to you. Integrity is going to have to ring true on just about every level. And I'm super sensitive to that. And so, Neville, talk a little bit about that. Here it is. This is the property that we've identified, but some funkiness was happening with the builder.
Yeah. I guess to start that one off, I always got super nervous with big decisions in life. And I remember even getting to the point to pull the trigger on an offer. Like, that was the scariest thing ever. Not so much the financial part of it, although that was a factor, but it was more so of making the right decision. Like, am I making the right decision? This is a big decision moving out here. And, but just talking it through with you, just praying about it, just pacing back and forth in my room, thinking about the decision, talking to God about it. Like, in the end, I said, okay, you know what, God, I pray you have my back. I think this is the one. I'm going to go put an offer in. We put an offer in, and, we started kind of doing the back and forth thing. Up until it seemed that particular builder started to get a little shady with the details. And I feel like if there's anything that God has taught me, like really solidified in my understanding, is follow the money in someone's heart. Like, that tells you if that's something you want to do business with or not,
Right.
And, without going into the details, a little back and forth happened. I got a bad feeling in my gut. I was like, man, if you're going to be shady with money, I just get a bad feeling about working with throughout the whole process. So at that point, we put a stop to it. I called you and I said, I don't think this is the right one. And I was really disappointed after I got off the phone with you. I was just like, man, like, that was, I felt like that was going to be as good as it was going to get, I was so disappointed that happened. But yeah, even after I got off the phone, I said, God, I prayed about this. So if this isn't working out, then hey, let's figure out, where I'm supposed to go next.
Yeah, no, but Neville, like, I think that was, at least even for myself, being on the realtor side, because look, ultimately it's whatever you want. And you knew, because going even back and forth with that builder and what they were doing, I was like, oh no, I don't need this, that much. And you don't understand, like, this is not just a client, to me. This is, number one, he's a man of God. And number two, he's a friend as well. Money to me, no, we can go somewhere else, but you're going to have integrity in going forward with this. And the details that you say, we're going to make sure that you follow through with those things, whether it be pricing and trying to gouge, individuals and not looking at the client care overall, and you're more concerned about money. Not good, not a good look. And so interesting, because in Proverbs 16, 7, love this. It says, when the Lord is pleased with the decisions you made, he activates grace to turn enemies into friends. So in the end, we didn't, do anything crazy as far as first amount and nothing like that. You still don't want to, burn bridges. Yeah. However, in the end, they understood, he was released from, the contract, but ultimately they knew, and we stood still and firm on the fact that no, money is not going to win out over, client care. It's just not going to. Yeah. And God's like, okay, great. Grace activated. Let's now look in a different direction. And so from there, that was a bummer, but what was solidified, I think, for you as you had time to process is, you know what? I don't think God wants me to leave where I'm at right now. I don't feel a tug. I don't feel a pull for that release. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, when, I think I had mentioned about Hayward coming up, because I had a client over there in a new construction, area in Hayward, mm-hmm. and Hayward not being too far, not being too close, but again, kind of being right in that sweet spot.
Yeah.
And so talk about that, kind of like that shift from one area to another.
Yeah, I mean, even the following week when we started looking at other places, closer to the Bay, and we said, and you purposely saved that spot in Hayward last. Remember when I got in the car, you said, hey, I have a surprise for you at the end of this, just an extra one that I threw on the list. Just want you to check it out. Just ran into it, So, I mean, we're kind of looking at some of the other ones that were older buildings. And, I just kept shaking my head like, man, I just know how much I have to do inside of these little condos. And I was so disappointed because I went from this huge home back to these crummy little, condos that were older than I am,
Yes.
I just dreaded having to spend my weekends remodeling just to make it look nice, and yeah, so you brought me to that place in Hayward. And I remember when you first thought about it, Hayward, I used to live in Hayward, or my mom used to stay in Hayward growing up. So
yeah, and I didn't know that when we were talking about it, right?
Yeah. So like something inside of me kind of wanted to move on from Hayward, but I was like, let's just go check it out, and sure enough, it was a brand new construction. Surprisingly, taking into account like the higher taxes in Mountain House, I was still about at the same paying out, on a monthly basis. So I was like, oh, okay, well, took a look at it, and it was, that spot you showed me was maybe about 75% of everything that I really, really, really wanted, if I had to put a percentage on it. And I remember I went home and I was like, man, I don't know, Hayward, like, the kitchen didn't have an island, I really wanted an island. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not even that big of a cook. I just thought I really wanted a nice island. But I went home and I thought about it, and I was just like, you know what? In the end, this would accomplish at least being closer to work, so I don't, go insane from commuting.
Right.
And I'm still close enough to not have to leave anything that I do on the weekend.
Yeah.
I would still have full access to all the communities that I'm part of. I wouldn't have to say bye to anyone. I'd still be close enough to my family to see them on a regular basis, close to friends from either side that are more on the East Bay, more in the South Bay. So after just kind of mulling it over, I ended up going back out there just by myself because I just wanted to absorb the place one more time. And then almost that, I feel like if somebody was watching me with a camera, they would be like, this guy looks like he's making a decision that's going to end his life if he makes the wrong one. That's how tough it was. Yeah. And then,
wait, but hold, pause right there because we got about 30 seconds, but
sure.
We're going to talk about that next step, because this is the crux of just how the verse of Proverbs 16, this is how God works. And I love stories like this where you think, okay, well, God, I made the decision and choice and I'm going to walk through it. And God's like, good, you made the choice and decision. You're walking in faith. I'm going to meet you now. So when we come back, we're going to talk about that faith step and how God just met you and guided and directed your footsteps. Stay tuned. All right, so we're equipping people of faith for the home buying process. I have my buddy, Neville, buddy and also past client on the call with me. And I love all my stories. I really, really do. And I hope you're enjoying this this story, because now we're going to get into the really fun part of the story. And it completely follows along Proverbs 16. We've already talked about the big part, how he works everything together to accomplish his purpose. Even the wicked are included it with his plans. Check. We also did, when the Lord is pleased with the decisions you've made, he activates grace to turn enemies into friends. Check. Now, also, too, it's better to have little with a heart that loves justice than to be rich and not have God on your side. Yep. Check on that one too. That's what led us over to Hayward. But now we're going to talk about, so Neville, so you were going in order to put your deposit down for the one that I had originally introduced you to. In Hayward, still good, about 75% on your list, but it was still good. It was doable. Even price point wise, pretty decent price as well. Mm-hmm. So explain a little bit how it got diverted. We're not in that one right now.
Yeah, I mean, all I know is before I even set back out to go drop that deposit check off, I prayed and I was like, okay, God, well, look, I'm not going to be a spoiled brat. Okay, I know what I really, really wanted. Hey, this is my first home. I got 75%, and I could still kind of stay, connected to everything that you have me connected to.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad place. It was pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I know if somebody, was grading me on this, they'd be like, dude, like, why are you, this is a great place. So I was like, all right, fine. I won't be that child, that spoiled little brat. So I said, okay, let's do this, God. Have my back. Got in the car, plugged my phone in, trying to just abiding with the laws of the land that I do. And I started driving, and I told my phone to navigate me verbally. I said, navigate me to that builder in Hayward, California. The route looked like it was about right, was routing me to Hayward. I know that there was only one location they had in Hayward, so it had to be routing me to the right place.
Right.
So I'm just following the directions. And I'm pretty familiar with Hayward because I so much time that I spent out here. And it tells me to take an exit like before what I thought it would be. Right. So I was like, well, that's weird. Maybe this is quicker because it is a little off the freeway. I was like, well, let me try it out. So I'm driving, following the directions. It navigates me to a different community, not just a different builder altogether. And I was like, what is going on? This isn't even the right place. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to put a deposit check down. Like, I just dropped by real quick. I parked my car. I went inside. I met one of their sales guys. I explained to him, I said, look, man, I'm not trying to waste your time. I'm actually on the way. I told him I'm on the way to go put a deposit check down on a different property. It just misrouted me here for whatever reason. And these look nice from the outside. I was just curious if I could have a quick look. He was like, yeah, I have a few minutes. And he just started laughing. And he said it himself. He said, oh, man, maybe you got misdirected for a reason. He said, yep. And in my mind, I was like, oh, shoot. I think that might be a little bit of confirmation, but we'll see. We'll see how this pans out.
Right.
Yeah. So he shows me a couple spots. The first spot he showed me, nothing kind of hit me about it. Showed me a second spot, nothing hit me about it. And then the third spot he showed me, literally I walked in and I was like, this place is awesome. This place is awesome. Like this. And I remember when I went into the main area and I saw the island. It had an island in the kitchen.
Yep. A huge one at that.
Huge island in the kitchen. And just the way it was laid out, the way it was in the corner, the way the light shone in.
Yep.
It was the model unit that they were using. So it was furnished.
It was the model unit.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember I called you and I was like, hey, so about that. Let's, yeah. And then, and then you ended up meeting me the very next day, and you walked it with me. And I think even your reaction when you walked into it, because I think you got a good general sense of what it was that I was looking for. I think your sense, and I'll let you speak to that, was like, wow, this is everything like you really did ask me for, pretty much. And hey, I was like, well, if this is really God, let me see how much I could I could really push this. So this place was more expensive than the other spot. It was bigger than the other spot.
Yes.
And so I just ended up offering exactly what I offered at the other spot, which is already lower. And I think it only took a day for them to come back and agree to all of my terms, 100%.
They did.
With no negotiation at all.
They did. And with even more so, we because this was the model, you had all your appliances included with it too. And these are some good appliances.
Yeah.
And it was a corner unit with high ceilings. I mean, it was done up. And obviously because it was it was already kind of like furnished and stuff too. So you kind of knew what you were getting.
How's it going to look? Yeah. How I could lay it out. Yeah. It was great. I liked it. Those appliances are nice, by the way. I love cooking on that stove.
but I love it because, you know, Neville, like I love seeing when you know, clients, when your faces light up, right? Mm-hmm. And when I went inside and I saw, especially the downstairs room, that area was completely separate, but we knew also too what you wanted to accomplish, right? Mm-hmm. So the goal was to accomplish having a place that if you chose to, you could have a roommate situation and it be separate and, you know, and everything be just space. You know, for garage was key. Number one, they had to have a garage. But the space. And so when we walked into this one, I said, I see, Lot, I see what you did. And going downstairs, going upstairs, I said, Neville, this is it. And it was a hard, you know, I had to call the other ones and say, nope. He actually found something that was more towards what he wanted to. And they actually were trying to even negotiate the price down over there, which they eventually did get down. But by that time, you know, the other place had came, but it's God's timing. Oh my gosh. And I love it too, because like you had a desire in your heart. Mm-hmm. And, you know, everything that you've done, even leading up to this point, you know, especially because I've known you for a while, right? Is really putting God first. God, if I put you first, you'll give me the desires of my heart. Mm-hmm. And I really want to put you first because I really want this. However, I still want it in a way that you really want to give it to me. But I'm okay if it's here. I'm okay. Mm-hmm. But this is what I really, really want. And and I think he kind of went above and beyond that, because this was nothing like what we saw before. And it was sitting there waiting. Mm-hmm. I was so surprised. It was waiting for you.
Yeah.
But the beauty about it too is, you know, and this is how you know, even to it being God, because in negotiation with it, they, as far as the price point and how they went down, because it was sitting for a little bit, like it was almost waiting for you. And still being able to get the credit back that we were able to, because it was like, well, you know what? Let's try it. Mm-hmm. And then kind of pitting the other one, like, hey, look, this is what we were going to get over here. Remember, he was on his way here. Yeah. What can you do? Can you make it happen? Mm-hmm. And that was the big part too. It was like, okay, God, if this is you, you're going to cause all of this to work out.
Yeah.
And,
yep.
And even from the loan to everything else, from the credit back to even the history of, you know, the home, you know, good gosh, even where it's located, right? So let's talk about that. Even the location. Mm-hmm. What struck you as being the best part of this location?
Yeah, even compared to the other one in Hayward, that one's like further in towards the downtown side. This one is kind of more on the southern tip of Hayward. So actually, you save like a good 15 minutes just driving into that location. So on the way home from work, I'm saving just time already. So.
Exactly. And then, you know, even what the community is going to look like when it's done, because it's not partially done. And when you're able to get in, understand people with new builds, new construction, you get in when there's other phases that are left. If you can do that, once those other phases are complete, technically, you know, the value of the homes will continue to increase, either stay the same or increase, all depending on, you know, what it looks like, especially now with COVID-19, things are probably a little bit stable, but not going under. Point being is, you know, being able to, you know, have a new build and everything is yours. So whatever you mess up, or you're the first person in there, you're the first owner
Yeah.
inside that home. And, and over there, they're going to have some more storefronts too. So it's going to be a nice little community with not only just people living there, but, the community, the park, the storefront, that's coming along there too.
Yeah. Yeah, they're building a brand new park. I was talking to my neighbor about it, and he said he snuck over there, and it's really nice, So yeah, it's great. It's great. It's a great area.
So, and so when we come back, we're going to wrap everything up, but, I see stories like yours, Neville, all the time. And, this probably doesn't give it as much justice as walking it out, but I get the opportunity to walk this thing out with people all the time. So we're going to wrap it up on the next segment. And, what advice would you give to those looking to start their search even now? Because just remember, COVID-19 happened like maybe about 2 weeks before you were set to close. And so, yes, some things kind of came up, but, still, it wasn't something that was able to deter us. Still were able to close using safety, but God still prevailed. So stay tuned. We'll talk about that. Tamika Ellsworth, Faith in Home Buying, equipping people of faith for the home buying process. All right, so we're wrapping things up with my buddy Neville and his wonderful home buying story. And if you missed it, please, you got to rewind that podcast. You got to listen to it, because it's filled with a lot of faith. It's filled with a lot of just assurance on God. And, when you're walking in God's grace, in your life, and that's a consistent thing that you stay in, He will continue to guide and direct you, even when times are uncertain. And so, Neville, what advice would you give someone during this time, looking for homes and, maybe kind of on the fence, or maybe scared to even go forward and make that decision? What advice would you give them?
Well, I feel like it's a combination of kind of being spirit-led with just kind of the practical stuff going on in your life. When, like you said, 2 weeks before I closed, that's when all this stuff happened, and I got really nervous. So I think part of it is to watch where your anxieties are really coming from. Are the anxiety you're feeling, is it really coming from the reality that the industry you're in will probably be affected by this, and there's a high chance that you might lose your job? Because if your anxiety or your just kind of doubt is rooted more in anything other than fear, then you might want to listen to it. But if the anxiety really is just kind of rooted in fear of the unknown, it really takes a second just to sit back and look at your story, like your personal story. Like, I knew one of the things that really, although I was kind of feeling that weakness in the moment of everything going down, I kind of taken a step back and just thinking about my own story. I saw that, like, look, I really feel like the timing of this was always like not rushed. It was always proper. Yeah. I really feel like this house, the way it came about, just with the story I shared, like, I felt like this was kind of God's way of saying this is, a good move for you. And in the end, that's what really helped me to stay on the horse and not jump off of it, So I really think it's just that people have to be real with themselves. Like, looking at it from a practical standpoint of my job, like, I'm in the construction industry, and I knew that construction would be affected. However, I also had a very strong sense that my job would be okay. It might slow down, but my job would be okay. So that, coupled with just kind of knowing how God was playing my story out, that was enough for me to make that solid, confident decision of continuing to move forward. So yeah, I feel like high level, just watch where your worries are coming from. Right. Is it rooted in fear? Is it rooted in wisdom? Don't discount. I've always been big on not discounting the practical aspects of life,
right,
and over spiritualizing them, because oftentimes when you're using wisdom on a very practical level, you're very much spiritualizing it. So yeah, I think that's, in a nutshell, that's the key right there to any decision. Yeah.
No, I love that, Neville. And I thank you again for coming on and sharing a little piece of your story. I love God's stories, and everyone that I come in contact. I remember in the beginning, I'm like, no, we're going to have a story here. God, we don't know how you're directing this, but this is going to be a good story that he's going to remember, and hopefully, tell people and evoke faith. I mean, if you're attached to me, God, I know faith is a big component of who I am. Hence, faith in home buying. And this verse sums up in the last part, Proverbs 6:9. Like, within your heart, you can make plans for your future, but the Lord chooses the steps you take to get there. And God's hand is not too short, nor his voice not too soft, that he can't guide and direct you for the still small voices. And then also, hey, he may use Siri every now and then in order to help guide and move and formulate his plans that he has for you, because they are good plans. They're plans for you to prosper. They're plans for you to accomplish a goal. And there are plans to continually build his kingdom as he's continuing to build his kingdom in you. And so I want to thank you again, and thank our listeners. And just know that I'm here for you. TamikaEllsworth.com, 408-561-7922. Tamika Ellsworth, Faith in Home Buying. Catch you later.